to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
We actually had a plan and lifted the debt ceiling, but we've made our economy stronger at the same time. What has the Senate done? The president not to negotiate is not what the American public wants. It's not how our government is designed.
What's the likelihood of getting these cameras into the Supreme Court anytime soon?
The American public wants visibility and transparency about their justice system.
Giving companies their own governments, that is not what a free market is all about, last I checked.
Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Nancy Cordes in Washington. Thank you so much for joining us. With the Biden re-election campaign now officially underway, former President Trump is taking aim at the person he hopes to challenge once again for the White House. He spoke today in New Hampshire. Former President Trump criticized President Biden during the speech, calling him, quote, crooked Biden.
The choice in this election is now between strength and weakness, between success or failure, between safety or anarchy, between peace or conflict and prosperity or catastrophe. We are living in a catastrophe.
For more on this, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Ed O'Keefe join me now. Caitlin is a CBS News political correspondent, and Ed is CBS News senior White House and political correspondent. Welcome to both of you. Caitlin, I'll start with you. If there's one thing that the former president is known for, it's going on the attack.
Yes.
Did he do that in this speech? And what are his attacks on the current president shaping up to look like?
And he's also known for giving nicknames. So he said today that he's retiring crooked Hillary and bestowing it upon Joe Biden, who he expects to be his rival in 2024. What was interesting about this is that all of the campaign appearances that we've seen from Donald Trump so far have really been focused on his own grievances. The last campaign appearance that he made was down in Mar-a-Lago, where, it gave it on the day of the indictment, and it was very much kind of a litany of grievances that he had with the indictment. And that's really been the focus of his new campaign thus far, is what people have done to him. Today, he took the attacks to Joe Biden. Of course, Joe Biden announced his re-election campaign this week. He talked a lot about how he basically wants to undo everything that Biden has done. But he also tied some grievances in there, saying that the economy was working before COVID took it away. He also took some jabs at DeSantis and some other rivals as well. But today was very much focused on Joe Biden. And a lot of Republicans, that's what they want to see. They want to see these contrasts made with Biden and not so much thinking about the past. He's still talking, so we'll still see what comes out of it. But that was the significance of today.
His nicknames work when they feed into a framework that voters already have about a politician. Does crooked Joe Biden really work? Our polling doesn't really reflect that people believe that Joe Biden is crooked. They may have other problems with him.
Right, exactly. And when you talk to Republicans, I've been asking them about, are you concerned about Biden's age and his mental acuity and his fitness for office? And they keep saying, no, I'm focused on his policy. And so, you have a lot of Republicans who are wanting to turn the page from Donald Trump but don't know how to do it. And he's leading the field by a significant and a healthy margin. And Republicans haven't really figured out how to take him down and haven't really shown a willingness yet as well. And so I think that's something to watch, too, here is there an appetite to have someone else? We just haven't seen that yet.
Right. Ed, you broke some news today. You reported that President Biden's new campaign manager, Julie Rodriguez, isn't actually his campaign manager just yet. She is still on the White House payroll, and she's going to remain on the White House payroll for about another month or so. Explain the delay here. Why not get her over to the campaign and get her working on this right away?
They wouldn't explain why she's sticking around for a few more weeks, but what it does signal is that this really is a slow build for Biden-Harris 2024, that they don't have the shingle out with all the workers there necessarily hung quite yet. If the big boss of this operation, the one that's supposed to be doing the hiring, the scheduling, the big logistical decisions, isn't starting until mid-May, it shows you that this, in essence, was designed to just start getting money flowing into an account, build up that account, and then start building out the campaign. The way Democrats working on this, the White House, the president's team sees it is 2023 is about raising money and laying the groundwork, literally and physically, literally and figuratively, and physically, because they're going to have to figure out where to put the headquarters. While 2024 is really when they're going to spend this, when they're going to get him out there in a far more active and frequent way. The guidance we got in the hours after this thing launched this week was watch him just continue to do the day job and keep his head down doing presidential things while the Republicans squabble amongst themselves over who should be their presidential nominee. And as congressional Republicans keep fighting amongst themselves to some extent over how exactly to approach these debt limit talks. And Democrats remain united over the idea that it has to be done cleanly. Can I just say, though, on the former president's speech here, two things come to mind. First of all, 4 years ago, when Joe Biden was facing opponents, they were focused to some extent on him while also focused on Donald Trump. Joe Biden kept focused mostly on Donald Trump, sending a message to fellow Democrats that the goal here is to defeat Trump. So let's just focus on that. To some extent, that's what Trump's doing here, reminding Republicans the goal is to get rid of Joe Biden. And here's my concerns with him. The other thing, though, is he is being presumptuous that he's going to ultimately be the guy. Polling certainly suggests right now that he will be. And he did needle in these remarks today Ron DeSantis to some extent and his other opponents and called out other elements of the Republican Party. So it's an interesting tact for him to just already be focused on the general election. But his team, if not him, know that that's what Joe Biden did 4 years ago. And it worked for Joe Biden. It may work for Donald Trump this time. We'll see.
Right. And they don't want to risk building other Republican candidates up by shining a spotlight on them.
Yeah.
Caitlin, I want to switch gears. Ed brought up the debt limit and House Republicans. House Republicans did something pretty surprising yesterday. They managed to pass a bill that would raise the debt ceiling, but only if it was accompanied by major spending cuts, including rolling back some of President Biden's signature legislative achievements. So where do things go from here?
Yeah, and Kevin McCarthy is getting a lot of praise from a lot of Republicans for holding a coalition together, something that wasn't certain several months ago during that speakership race when we were all wondering, if you can't get the votes for speaker, how can you possibly get them for actual legislation that needs to pass? So, yes, it's a victory for him this week that he was able to cajole his conference. But the biggest question is what happens when the Senate doesn't take this up? No appetite for it there, of course, given the makeup of the Senate. Republicans are, obviously the White House has said that they don't want to negotiate on the debt limit at all. They just want a clean raise. And so what can you actually get past this House under those parameters still remains a big question. So while this was a victory for them today, there is such an uphill climb to actually get something through. And you saw the haggling that had to happen just for those, that slim margin of votes to get from Republicans, and some that didn't want to raise it at all, even with those concessions.
No one has any idea right now how this is going to turn out. Ed, finally, it is Take Your Children to Work Day today, and you and I had a chance to take our own children to the place where we work, which is the White House. My son, Noah, your daughter, Amelia, were among the kids who clamored to put a question to White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre in a special briefing just for the kids. Let's take a look at what Noah and Amelia had on their minds.
We've been talking a lot about AI at our school, and I'm wondering if President Biden is worried about audio or video of himself being altered in a harmful way.
So, this has come up a couple times in the briefing. I don't know if you pay attention or watch the briefings, Noah. And the president recently held a meeting with his team on AI specifically, and this is something that his team is certainly taking a look at.
What is his favorite dinner food?
Oh, so there's a few that I know of. He likes spaghetti, which is pretty cool. I love spaghetti too, like spaghetti with red sauce. And so that's one of his favorite meals.
Ed, I have to say, Amelia managed to squeeze 3 questions in there, which I would expect nothing less from an O'Keefe.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And, it's a reminder, I think, to us and to our families that it's a privilege to get to do this job and to do it every day alongside our colleagues, and a privilege to be able to work in this place. And I know I, as a dad, was proud to be able to show it off to at least one of our kids today. And Ouija had her kids over here, too. So that was fun.
Yes, she did.
And
Yes,
it's nice to see all of our colleagues who are hard-nosed and aggressive fact-seekers melt a little bit in front of their kids, or at least have to play mom and dad. So it was a lot of fun. And it was great to finally meet Noah.
Oh, thank you. I feel the same way about Amelia, and they were very appreciative to have that opportunity. So thanks for letting us share that. And thanks for being on Red and Blue. Caitlin Huey-Burns, Ed O'Keefe, thank you both.
Take care.
A bipartisan group of senators is pushing for cameras to be installed inside the Supreme Court. They say the move could improve the public's trust in the justices. The Supreme Court has refused to allow TV or still cameras inside oral arguments for years. So for more on this, CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, welcome to you. Various groups, lawmakers have been calling for cameras in the nation's most prestigious courtroom for decades, on and off. It's never happened. What makes them think that things might be different this time?
There's so much renewed attention and scrutiny on the Supreme Court ever since the ruling last June overturning abortion rights. U.S. senators are uniquely good at noticing when there's attention on an area of interest. So they have renewed two different pieces of legislation. One would require judges to allow for cameras in federal courts, U.S. district courts, where so many criminal cases are charged, and a separate one that would allow cameras into the U.S. Supreme Court. One has better prospects than the other, but first let's hear from each of these two senators about why they think it's a good idea.
I don't think it would affect in any way anything that the 9 Supreme Court justices are doing.
You don't think any of them would change their tenor, their tone, or their message if they knew there was a camera fixed on them?
No, I don't think so. I think they approach it in a very intellectually honest way. It might cause Clarence Thomas to ask more questions, but he's doing that anyway.
Right now, the credibility and trust in our whole judicial system is under a cloud, and we need to let the sun shine through, both for accountability and to restore and preserve trust.
Now, this effort to get cameras in the Supreme Court is a perennial Don Quixote-type mission that never works. But in the district court legislation, both senators are optimistic. All this attention on the January 6 cases, democracy under threat, no cameras allowed. They say this may give it momentum. And Nancy, they believe the real fight is just finding floor time. They think they have sufficient votes to make that happen.
Scott, we have just confirmed a pretty major piece of news, which is that the former Vice President Mike Pence testified for 7 hours before a grand jury investigating former President Trump's actions before and after the 2020 election. Can you tell us more about that?
I'll tell you what was happening at the courthouse over those 7 hours. We saw a checkpoint that usually has 2 or 3 federal security officers with 14 or 15. We saw black SUVs circling the federal courthouse for much of this day. So we were suspicious something was happening of consequence with this grand jury. But let's note and underscore the significance of a former vice president sitting in front of a federal grand jury of any sort, much less one that's potentially investigating a former president, and documents at Mar-a-Lago and potentially efforts to overturn the 2020 election. A seismic moment in an investigation that's unparalleled and still to be unfurled. There are so many chapters of this story that have yet to be written and yet to be read.
And it was not a foregone conclusion until recently that the former vice president would be able to testify. And so we'll be watching for any tidbits you and other reporters can glean about what exactly he shared. Scott MacFarlane, thank you so much. Republicans pass a debt limit bill and say it's time for President Biden to make a move. We'll ask a senior advisor to the president about that next. You're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
There is a new streaming program on CBS News. America Decides, taking you inside American politics and American democracy.
The best stories, the most important stories, the most reliable facts on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
A conversation that kind of gets you beyond the noise and gets at the root of the issue.
Here on America Decides, we strive to bring you answers.
All the news can be pretty overwhelming.
Gun control, the economy, education, immigration.
It is clearly a pivotal moment in Congress.
As both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
That's why I'm in the halls of the Capitol, chasing lawmakers to cut through the gridlock and provide a deeper understanding of the issues.
The need for this kind of tell-it-to-you-straight reporting is greater than ever.
The 2024 presidential race is already underway.
We're heading toward a very heavy election season.
Where will this all go? We don't know, but we will cover it all.
Bringing you the headlines, the perspective and analysis that you need every weeknight.
Thoughtfully, with context, without hyperbole.
The team at the CBS News Washington Bureau will share with you the conversations that we have with sources all day long. You're going to hear a lot of reporting, a lot of conversations.
Whether you're a political junkie or someone who's just dipping into the waters of politics and want to learn more.
Join us. Be part of the conversation.
I'm Nancy Cordes.
I'm Ed O'Keefe.
I'm Nicole Killian.
I'm Scott McFarland.
I'm Weijia Jiang. I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns on the campaign trail in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
I'm Major Garrett, Chief Washington Correspondent for CBS News.
I'm Robert Costa, Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent.
CBS News Streaming, the show America Decides.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
I always tell people that Twitter would not be Twitter without Black Twitter. It's just us being in fellowship with each other.
And it becomes a conversation you don't want to be left out of.
People really started to recognize the power of activism on Twitter.
Based on that one tweet, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite was trending around the world.
If anything has really powered Black Twitter, it's been humor.
If your food ain't right, we're going to tell you about that too.
We tend to create change, create culture and cool.
That's how movements happen on Black Twitter and go beyond more than that.
Black Twitter, the Twitterverse that changed a generation. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Happy to meet with McCarthy, but not on whether or not the debt limit gets extended. That's not negotiable.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. That was President Biden saying he will not give in to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's demands for negotiations over the debt limit. This, as many warn that Washington may only have until June to avoid default. Gene Sperling, who serves as a senior advisor to the president, joins us now. Gene, thanks so much for being with us. First of all, I think the White House, like many in Washington, assumed that the House Speaker wouldn't be able to keep his party together to pass this spending cut bill. But now that he has, doesn't that give him the leverage to force the president to negotiate with him?
I think it gives him a better point to ask for serious budget discussions. It does not give him, or really anyone, the right to say that we want to have a discussion where it's either my way or we will put the United States in default for the first time in our history. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to understand that. Saying that you want to negotiate, that you want to tell the entire country that if you do not get your budget, your policy goals, you will put the United States in default for the first time in our history and potentially cause a serious recession. No one should do that. Let me be clear, not Democrat or Republican, not liberal or conservative. And since 2011, everyone has understood this. Consider that 3 times President Trump asked to raise the debt. 3 times. Not once did Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer say, well, President Trump, if you don't pass my child care proposal, if you don't pass my paid family leave proposal, things they really believed in, we will put our country into default. That's not anything anyone should do. That's not anything the Democrats did under President Trump. And to even risk it causes, to even engage in default brinksmanship, as we saw in 2011, can cause over 1 million jobs to be lost, can hurt consumer confidence, and could indeed contribute to a recession.
Prior to 2011, though, President Obama was willing to negotiate. And aren't Republicans now able to say, look, we did everything the president told us to do? He said, show me your budget. We showed him our budget. We passed our plan. And now he's the one who won't compromise.
No, that's actually not the case. It is the case that in 2011, the Republicans did force, really against President Obama's will, the discussion and negotiation to include raising the debt limit. Virtually everyone, Democrat, Republican, certainly everybody in the financial and business community saw that that was a very dangerous thing to do, because now you're having a negotiation where you're telling the world that the full faith and credit of the United States, which has been rock solid since Alexander Hamilton really laid down the marker at our founding, that now that is going to be determined by whether a political party can get their wishes. So the fact is that, yes, I was involved in the 1997 bipartisan budget negotiations. We had a plan. They had a plan. We discussed, we negotiated something. But to be clear, no one ever said, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to put our country into default. So what they need to do is to say, of course, you pay your debts. Of course you pay your past debts. Of course you don't have America default and cost millions of jobs and hurt consumer confidence and our rating and standing in the whole world. Of course you don't do that. But, Mr. President, you've put down a budget. We've put down a budget. We'll have that discussion. I mean, I think their budget is draconian. It would, over 10 years, cut in half things like cancer research, aid to children with disabilities. So we'll have that discussion. But neither us nor them should say, but if you don't do what I want, we are going to put the United States into default. That's just wrong for anyone to do.
I hear what you're saying about the potential catastrophic implications of default, but as a political realist, you've worked in this town for decades. How does this end? House Republicans would probably try to remove Speaker McCarthy from his position if he were to hold a vote right now to raise the debt ceiling without any concession. So he can't do that. So how does this end without calamitous implications for the U.S. economy?
Well, consider what you're saying. You're saying that if the president essentially doesn't agree to the most extreme MAGA agenda, that the Republican leadership is going to put the country into default. I want to just be clear how dangerous this is. In 2011, when there was a legitimate risk of default because of Republican brinksmanship on the default, Moody's estimated it cost us 1.2 million jobs. People's retirement values went down. Consumer confidence went down 22%. It could not. Now we're at a time where you've had already financial issues with banks. This could be very dangerous. Just the act of them engaging again in default brinksmanship. So I think that one could agree that we are going to pay our bills as we would ask any country or any family to do, and that we can then sit down and have a real debate with the country over whose vision is best on the budget. I think the people will side with President Biden, but he does not feel, nor does that he needs to get his way by threatening that he would put the country in default. So they have got to come to terms and have some basic sense of responsibility. What a terrible thing that would happen in our country if everyone started saying, if I don't get my way, I'm willing to put the United States into a recession and cost millions of people their jobs, their homes, and their retirement savings.
And all of this coming as economic growth slows, and there are ongoing concerns about the commercial real estate sector. Gene Sperling, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nancy.
Sure thing. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' overseas trip took him to Jerusalem today. Why he's traveling the globe and how he's responding to a lawsuit from Disney. You're streaming Red and Blue.
An original original documentary from CBS Reports. Controversial Congressman George Santos.
Why won't you answer our questions?
How did he manage to get elected?
Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the USA.
George Santos' campaign was a campaign of deceit, lies, fabrication.
And who is he, really?
I knew him as Anthony DeVolder from Queens.
Really, who he is, he's a fraud.
I compare him to the Tinder swindler.
From people who know him, the truth, the facts, the lies.
He would say that he was worth $100 million.
It's an incredibly cynical episode in American politics, beyond satire.
Had you ever seen anything like this?
No, and I hope I never see it again.
Campaign of Deceit, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
She dazzled on the court and off the court as a businesswoman.
Thank you for joining us on Person to Person. Tennis superstar and entrepreneur Serena Williams.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
I asked my students, what are we going to do about racism in the United States?
The backlash over teaching about racism in American schools.
I don't think it has any place in the classroom.
We can either pretend and say, no, we're not racist and we're all great people, or we can actually start to do the really, really hard work of addressing it.
How did you lose your job? I made the statement that white privilege is a fact.
Is it helping diversity and inclusion?
When you bring in different people's stories and experience, it enriches education.
If you don't talk about something, it doesn't go away.
Or driving us further apart?
What schools are doing to our children in the name of anti-racism is in fact teaching them racism.
The intention is to put us in this war against each other.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
I was entitled to equal pay for equal work under the law.
Does the Supreme Court's power need to be checked?
9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them said no, she's not entitled. That's not right.
Calls to fix the court tend to go along with the politics of the moment.
Republican-appointed justices have all tended to go in one direction, with the Democratic-appointed justices tending to go in another.
Even though it's only 9 justices, it takes 5 of them to make the law of the land.
Does it have political impact? True. Political intent? Probably not true.
If the American people don't trust the judgment of their court, that's a real problem for our democracy.
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis spoke in Israel today about the need to stand firm in support of that country. DeSantis will travel to the United Kingdom tomorrow to round out his international travel. For more, CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro joins us now. Hi, Aaron. So it's been a whirlwind week for the Florida governor already. He has visited Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, South Korea, and now Jerusalem. Give us the major headlines from this overseas journey.
Some of the top headlines have come in his interviews with foreign press or at press conferences. In Japan, when asked about the Russia-Ukraine war, he said he approves of a ceasefire in that conflict. In Israel, he said that the U.S. shouldn't, quote, butt their heads in some of the country's issues, an indirect reference to the judicial reforms that resulted in protests in that country. But overall, this trip is notable for someone like DeSantis, someone that could be running for president of the United States, because he has faced some flack over his foreign policy stances. He had a shifting answer on whether the Ukraine war is a U.S. priority, and that's resulted in some criticism, even from Republicans in Congress, on whether he has foreign policy credentials.
And we know that one of the main things that presidential candidates or potential presidential candidates do when they are thinking of running for the White House is to go on a foreign trip to try to burnish those credentials. Aaron, another big topic of controversy that has dogged this governor overseas is the fact that the Walt Disney Company sued him on Wednesday, alleging that the governor has overseen a, quote, targeted campaign of government retaliation, end quote. Disney says this threatened the company's operations. So what happens now, and how has Governor DeSantis himself responded?
So this all dates back to the Parental Rights of Education bill in 2022, which prohibits sexual orientation and gender identity from being taught in the 3rd grade and below. That's been expanded to the 12th grade. But when that bill first came out in 2022, Disney publicly opposed it, and DeSantis looked to punish the corporation by taking some of their special powers in the district that Disney World is in. Disney is claiming there is a First Amendment violation there. And take a look at how DeSantis responded when asked about this in Israel.
I don't think the suit has merit. I think it's political. I think they filed, in Tallahassee for a reason, because they're trying to generate, some district court decision. But we're very confident on the law.
Some of DeSantis's potential rivals in 2024, Nikki Haley, Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, have used this battle between DeSantis and Disney to show that he may not be ready for some of the battles that a president will have to take on.
Right. And despite the governor's argument that he's just trying to keep Disney from getting special treatment, it's clear that this is something that he was not that concerned about until Disney started speaking out against some of his policies. Aaron Navarro, thanks so much for bringing us the latest. Well, that does it for today. You've been streaming Red and Blue, our final show before we get a new name on Monday. Red and Blue launched on January 3rd, 2017, with my colleague Elaine Quijano at the helm. Since then, the program has covered elections, politics, and policy issues that impact the country and the world. House Republican leaders don't always Trump's Twitter habits.
The president-elect says he wants to move on from the issue of Russia's hacking. Do you support holding further hearings?
If the Russians are hacking, they shouldn't be allowed to hack.
President-elect has said we should move on from this issue. How will all of this play out?
In a purely political sense, Donald Trump's going to become president of the United States on January 20th. And at that moment, most of the information that he has about how the world works is going to be filtered through intelligence agencies that he is now denigrating.
A lot to keep an eye on.
On Monday, we become America Decides. Same time, 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern. Same political reporting from our CBS News team, but a new name. Thank you so much for watching. You're streaming CBS News. Have a good one.
There is a new streaming program on CBS News, America Decides, taking you inside American politics and